Well, welcome back. It's good to see my people back here again. Thank you last week. Many of you brought your family and friends, and some of you brought your parents. And Easter's always a hit or miss for me because I sometimes feel like I'm walking on eggshells. You know what I'm talking about? Because we have our people, which I can say what I want to say to, but then you have all these guests. And the last thing I want to do is ruin your Easter. You know what I'm talking about? Where you all leave, and instead of enjoying Easter eggs in your kids, you're arguing about the pastor and his political and spiritual and theological views. And so I hope it was a good day for you. But I do want to acknowledge that and just say I am aware when I step into a room who's seating in this room, and I am aware of the things that I say, and I do my best to make sure we make it as easy on you as actually possible. All right. At the same time, my allegiance is not to you. You know what I'm yeah, like I have a boss. You know what I'm talking about, and his name is God. All right. So, all of that said, thank you. It was amazing Easter, and I'm just so grateful. But I'm thankful you came back. This feels a little more like home to me. So, shall we give a sermon? All right. Well, I'm going to give one to Kevin. The rest of you can join in if you'd like. All right. All right. We've been in this series called Everything Revealed, a historical and literary reading of the book of Revelation. And we are now in teaching number 16. For those of you that are listening, you've been following along. I had a friend, someone I never met before, emailed from Texas this week. And he has said he'd been listening, and I think he said something like, "I'm now 15 hours in to your series on the book of Revelation." And I'm like, that's about right, because I think we're in about part 16. All right. So, what I want to do today is I want to read this particular text to you. If you're just joining us, you're like, what am I stepping into? Man, you can go back 16 parts. We talk about the historical context around what scholars have talked about is the most dangerous book in the Bible, the book of Revelation. We have said so much about this book, and we've methodically just walked through almost chapter by chapter, and we're coming to an end. I think if everything goes okay today, I'll try to end it next week. If not next week, the week after, but we'll try to end it next week. That said, we're in the best part of Revelation, so if you're just joining us, the good news is you don't have to worry about all the violence. It's behind us. All right. We're in chapter 21. Now, there are 22 chapters in this book, and so we're coming down to the end. Today, what I want to do is read a portion of chapter 21, and then we'll read a little bit of chapter 22 as well. So, that said, you need to know this. The Roman Empire has come to an end in the book of Revelation. John is using apocalyptic literature. This is the genre in which he's writing, and the empire has ended. And as you know, anything ends, something new has space to emerge and begin. So something always ends for something new to begin. And it's as if John is showing us that he stands in a long line of prophets who believed history is heading somewhere. And he believed a new day, a new age, a new era, a new city was possible, and that it was actually within reach to these late first century Jesus followers. And so, what John does is, as the empire comes to an end, he doesn't leave us in nihilism, all right? He doesn't leave us in dread, despair, violence. He doesn't leave us with, hey, the whole planet's going to burn. Good luck. This is not how John ends his story. I had a teacher growing up, and her name was Miss Bowers, and she was seventh grade, I believe it was. Yes, seventh grade, seventh, eighth grade. And she used to come into class, and she had a mantra she wrote on the board. And then she would tell us often, we would raise our hands as kids, and I would say something like, Miss Bowers, I'm having a hard time with this math equation. And when we started complaining, she would always say to us, she referred to her board, and on her board was this statement: life is hard, and then you die. And here's what's interesting about that statement. I remember even as a kid going, that feels a bit pessimistic. But she was kind of undermining our pain and suffering. You know what I'm talking about? As a seventh grader, like, I lost my girlfriend. I don't know the answers to this math test. I've made an F. And she would say, life is hard, and then you die. It's interesting because I don't remember hardly anything growing up in school. Like a few things, obviously, I've learned a few things, but like that statement stuck with me all through the years. Life is hard and then you die. And I don't know what kind of life advice that is, but I will say this. What's good about John is John doesn't just end, hey, first century, I just want you to know, yeah, life is hard and it's going to get worse. And then ultimately, I just need you to know the whole thing is going to end in utter explosions. The sun's going to run into the earth. It's going to blow up. Utter annihilation, extinction, nothing. It would just be absolute annihilation. And that's where we're heading. So, yeah, life is hard. You're going to die. That's just what it is. John doesn't do that. It's like John leads us to a point where the empire caves in on itself. And that's how it works. You cannot traffic weapons and not expect to be overcome by weapons one day. That's just how it works. You cannot play around with dictators and authoritarian leaders and expect not to be overcome by dictator and authoritarian leaders. That's just how it works. And some of you know this, but you need to remember this. All empires come to an end. John's writing to the late first century Jesus followers. He's talking about the Roman Empire and the beast, the dictator, the authoritarian leader, Emperor Domitian, who ruled with a vicious authoritarian leadership, killed anyone who got in his way. Lots of people went missing in the first century. If you opposed the empire, you would go missing. That's how it worked. And they didn't even just hide it. Many of these people, they would just throw up on a cross and kill. This is the point of the death of Jesus. Jesus opposed the empire of the day, and he was hung on a cross publicly. It's a public declaration that you do not mess with the emperor and his empire. And this is why, for many people, the image, when they read the book of Revelation, they read it from a futurist perspective. But if you listen to what they say, God, the story just doesn't end well at all. Even at best, for a lot of evangelicals, and I grew up evangelical, even at best, they would say, yes, the thing is going to implode in on itself. It's going to cave in. That's just how it works. This is a part of the process. But check it out. Then we're all going to die, and then there's going to be a judgment. But even their story says, if you don't believe certain things, then you're going to end up in a burning fire of eternal conscious torment. Like, that's a story many of us were handed. And here's the thing, it works because it's based in fear. And fear has a way of motivating. Fear has a way of being very lucrative, right? Fear makes money. Fear can build a church, by the way. You want to grow a mega church? Don't center it on Jesus. Center it on fear. This is how it works. But what John does is something monumental. Now, we're not going to be able to get to it today. My aim is next week. But it is the best possible ending that you could ever fathom in your mind. Literally, John shows us an image right in the midst of being oppressed. Remember, John is exiled to the island of Patmos. He's been pushed to the edges because he resisted empire. That's how it works, right? We told you people went missing. Some were hung on a cross. John was exiled. If you backtalk the emperor, you will be pushed to the edges. That's the image we're given. And John's on this island, and he refuses to buy in to the image, the vision that the emperor is spitting out. Instead, he gives us an alternative one. And what he says is, no, it doesn't end there. I'm going to give you the best possible ending you could ever imagine. And that's where we're heading. And I'll give you a little bit of a hint. It ends with the restoration, renewal, and redemption of, and I mean this word when I say it, all things. A-L-L. It is the most inclusive term in our vocabulary. When he says all, he means all. And this is a part of the image that he's giving us in this moment. So after everything is ended, everything is collapsed, John stands there and he says, oh, before we leave, I had another vision. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. descending upon us. And he goes on to describe this new heaven and new earth. And he says, inside this new heaven and new earth was a new city, a new Jerusalem. And that in this city, which is juxtaposed to the, quote, eternal city, unquote, that was Rome, he's juxtaposing these two cities going, Rome and Domitian and their eternal city promised so much for us. They promised it was going to be a golden age. They promised so much about peace and the Pax Romana, and how the world was going to be greater than it ever been before under Domitian. But then it's interesting because what you begin to see is that it actually didn't turn out that way. There were like all these promises, but these promises were at the expense of so many people. And what we've learned is the end doesn't justify the means. And somehow what you have is Emperor Domitian trying to build his kingdom using the devil's tools. And that never works. And John just steps in and he says, hey, I want to give you some sense of hope in this first century with what you're walking through. And here's the hope that I want to give you. There is coming a time. It is here. It's not something that's way out there. It's present here within us. We are ushering it in this moment. And this city is juxtaposed. It stands beside this eternal city, Rome, that did not deliver for us. But this city, it's a place where there'll be no more crying, mourning, or pain. He goes on to say, because the first things have passed away. Behold, I am making all things new, the divine says. And I want to be clear about this. We said this last week, but that is present tense. I am making all things new. It's happening right now. This isn't, I will, when you die, make all things new. It's going to be fine. This isn't, I did. Nope, it's happening in the moment. And I want to be clear about this. God is not making all new things, but all things new. And there is a critical distinction to be made there. God is not making all new things, but all things new. What I mean is he's not discarding all that is to give us something brand new. No, this is renewal. This is restoration. And this has consequences because it means we can't just discard the earth that we've been handed. All of that said, after he runs through this, he starts to go into detail. Because, of course, he's not going to just leave us like, there you have it. No, because you know there are people who are like, tell me more about this vision you've had. And John's like, okay, let's go into it for a minute. And inside this vision, my God, there's so many critiques of the Roman Empire even within it. And so what I want to do is I want to read just a portion of it. Now, if you're here, you can read the whole thing if you want to. Revelation chapter 21, read it all the way through 22. But I want to read just a portion of it because, God, it's got some brilliant, brilliant ideas. So this is Revelation 21. We'll pick up at verse 21 now. He's already jumped into describing this new city. He talks about how this new city has these walls around it all the way around. Now, that kind of speaks to safety. But I also want to pause here for a second and say something, because a couple years ago, I guess it would have been the last term, when Trump came into office, his whole big thing was about building a wall. I don't know if you remember that. And Mexico was going to pay for it, to which I'm be like, I now want to be like, what happened if that was a thing, and then now it's no longer a thing? And how'd that work out, by the way? I'm not sure. But here's what's interesting. I went down there. I went down to see his wall. I went to Emory, and we're educated students, and they were like, we need to take people down there. So I went down there. I met with Border Patrol. I talked to them. Talked to Border Patrol. Talked to Native Americans, like Native Americans who had graves of their ancestors that they were trying to put the wall right through. So they needed to take up their bodies and their bones. And I'm like, man, if that isn't a picture of America, I don't know what is. You've already came here and you literally just genocide everyone who's here, push them out of the way. Then you have the audacity after you buried their bones to be like, now we need to protect what we stole. Kevin, here, you go ahead. Kevin's got a sermon. It's brewing. But we can talk about this, right? I mean, this, And I know some of you are like, let's not talk about it. That's part of our problem. And this is a part of why, because hear me, you know I've said this 1,000 times. I'm not here to represent sides. I'm not. And I think most of us are probably that way in here. Call it whatever you want to. The Jesus movement, some people call it just the way of love. Yes. Like that's who we represent. I'm always amazed when I get into a discussion with someone like, yeah, but you guys, and I'm like, who are you guys? I never signed up to represent the left. I didn't sign up to represent the right. Last I heard, I don't know how you know this, but I committed my life to a king and a kingdom that is present here, but turns out it doesn't have an American flag. Yeah, my dad was a fundamentalist. If he taught me anything, it was this: you keep following Jesus no matter what. Turns out I started following him, and now they're like, you're following him a little too serious. And now I'm confused. I'm like, so which one is it, Trump or Jesus? I'm confused. Was it always the Republican Party or was it Jesus? Which one was it? Because they blended the two, and now they're making me decide. And I want you to know it's not a hard decision. Yeah, it's the way of Jesus. And I would reach out to every evangelical and go, my God, you chose to follow a man that's going to lead you to destruction. Like detour, you've gone down the wrong path. I never imagined I would have to speak to my evangelical family going, you've lost your way. You have lost your way. Here's the word for it: repent. Change your mind. Turn. Get back on the path of Jesus in love and compassion and loving your neighbor. Get back to the Bible that you preached and taught us. If you just go back to that Bible, you will see a clear distinction between the empire of America and the kingdom of God, because they do not run parallel with each other, and you're deceiving yourselves if you believe they do. Whew, God. Have we read the text yet? We haven't read the text. Okay. I told you it was post-Easter. I was like, my friends are back. We can talk about whatever we want. Oh, I know where I was at. Walls. Because we'd read like the first line, or we haven't read the first line yet. John is just, he's writing about the walls, because there are walls around Jerusalem. I mentioned all that to you because I went down to the border, and yes, there's nuance. Yeah, of course there's nuance. Yep, there's nuance to be had. There's discussions to be had, absolutely. And man, these Border Patrol agents, even they had conflicts internally, because they're like, we're here to do an order, but at the same time, they're seeing the suffering and pain. People that are trying to seek asylum. Yeah, there's a lot there. And even this week, God, watching democracy crumble before my eyes is something to behold. When you arrest a judge, like I'm telling you, if the warnings, I'm not here to give anxiety and fear. We get enough of that from the news. But the little lights on the dashboard should be blinking for us. They should at least be blinking. And if they're not blinking in your world, then maybe it's a moment for you to take a step back and be like, wonder why that doesn't even bother me. Yeah, they should be blinking a little bit. Yeah, when people just like start getting snatched up from the streets because they disagree, the lights should be blinking. If I'm not here next Sunday, the lights should be blinking. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? I've already told Katie, I was like, prepare thyself and make sure we have a good attorney at Vinings Lake, all right? Y'all are going to need to take up an offering for the bell of Pastor Cody, all right? But I mention all that to you because I go down on this border, and the heartache, the pain of people that live right in the path, and they're watching this happen, and it's an interesting thing because we've fallen into the idea that, just listen to this, how absurd this is, that if you build a certain feet of wall, that it will protect you from, and hear this, a minority group that's out to get you. Hear the scapegoating in that. Hear what's happening in that. It's leverage of fear that someone's out to harm you, get you, and take your money and jobs. And so let's build up walls to protect ourselves from those people. All right? And what happened during that process is we had politicians and legislation and legislators that came around, and I loved it because you had all the Jesus people going, that just doesn't feel right. But then you had like politicians who knew just a little bit about the Bible, and they exposed themselves. They keep exposing themselves, by the way. I don't know if y'all see that, but they keep standing on the Bible and they say something, but they don't read the verse before. It's lazy. It is lazy. Do you hear what I'm saying? That is lazy hermeneutic. Like, I don't want Vinings Lake to have a lazy hermeneutic. If you're going to quote a scripture and use a proof text to back up your ideology, for God's sake, read at least, at a minimum, the verse before and after. Do you understand what I'm saying? Please. My recommendation would read the whole book because they didn't have chapter and verses when they wrote this. Do you understand that? So if you're going to quote Revelation, you might need to read chapter 1 through 22. Because John wasn't like, well, let's just stop here at verse 2. No, the whole entity is together, right? But these politicians, they keep exposing themselves. They'll read a verse, and every theologian on the planet's like, that's just a cursory reading. Like it's just right there. And one of the things they did was they always talked about this. They'd be like, hey, listen, in heaven, because they saw this, chapter 21, 22, as a picture of heaven, which is a futurist reading. We've talked about that. We'll get back to it in just a minute. But they saw it as heaven, and they would say, heaven, even heaven has border walls. Have you heard this? This is what they said. They would so they're trying to, again, they were trying to justify all of the money they're putting into this wall, build this wall. They're like, even heaven has border walls. And then they went right here. So this is Revelation 21, verse 21. So I'm just going to tell you, here's the proof text that they used. And the 12 gates are 12 pearls. So he's already listed the walls. Now he's saying there are gates, and there are 12 gates. By the way, you do know all of that is loaded. This is apocalyptic literature. The 12 gates represent the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, the whole thing is just layered. The 12 gates are 12 pearls. Each of the gates is a single pearl. Okay, just pause. You already know you're not reading literally. You understand that, right? This is apocalyptic literature. And if you are reading literally, then I have a question. How large was that oyster? Because a gate as a single pearl, now that's something I would like to see, right? And the street of the city is pure gold, transparent as glass. We're going to come back to that one in just a minute because some of you have been handed a futuristic reading of this and you're like, oh, Revelation 21, 22, it's a picture of heaven. And when we die, check it out, pearly gates. Have you heard that phrase? Have you ever thought about that? Now, I'm not here. If some of you've deconstructed, some of you've reconstructed, some of you hadn't even constructed. You're all over the place. I get it. We have so many wisdom traditions. I get it. There's family in the room right now and people that have deconstructed, but their family hasn't. Like, this is all awkward. I get it all. I feel all that I know. Yes. I mean, I have parents. They listen to some of my sermons. Could you imagine? I pray for them daily. God help them, right? But here's the thing. All of this imagery, we're going to get to in just a second. Many futurists are like, it's just going to happen. There'll be pearly gates. You're going to get there. You're going to die. I mean, this is the image. So some of you right now, if I said, give me a picture of heaven, you'd be like, I'll tell you exactly what it's going to be. I'm going to die. And then I'm going to float up. My body's just going to float up. And then I'm going to get on a cloud. And on a cloud, there'll be some steps. And then you're going to walk up the steps. And then you're going to open the door. Then there's going to be Katie, there's going to be a hallway. It's an inside joke. There's going to be a hallway. And I'm going to walk down. And then at the end of the hallway is the throne. You know what I'm talking about? And then you're going to bless you, you're going to get to the throne. And then God's going to make some decisions. And this is what I was taught. He's going to make some decisions. We already did that throne scene, if you want to go back to that. That was nothing but a flip of the Roman Empire and the imperial court. That's all it was. Remember, John is writing in a context, historical context. But we were like, you're going to be judged. And then depending on which name is written in which book, One will go up and spend eternity in heaven. One will go down and spend eternal conscious torment, because nothing says God is love like eternal conscious torment. But remember, they'd always say, God didn't send you to hell, you sent yourself there. But I would just like to add, can you not feel the strain in that statement to absolve God of all responsibility of sending someone to eternal conscious torment? You know why you can feel that strain? Because even the best of fundamentalists knows it is not ethically or morally right to punish someone forever and ever and ever for any act they've done. So then now you're telling me God is unjust. Yeah, that's a whole thing. But check it out. There's going to be someone there, Peter, and he's going to say, "Come on in, thy good and faithful servant. You've done well." And depending on how good you've done depends on how big your mansion is. So some of you are casual Christians. Some of you don't even give 10%. You give 1%, 2% to the church. You've never gave $1 to the person on the side of the street that has the sign that says, I'm homeless but need alcohol because they're honest. You know what I mean? You've never done, and so we're going with it today. You come and you're just like, there could be some truth. That's kind of why I go to church. There could be some truth there. I'm not sure. But one thing that you are certain about, you're not certain about a lot, but one thing you are certain about is you will die. That's kind of a guarantee. So you're like, and so that's the trick. Everyone knows they can't get out of death. But then we were all handed these narratives about death, so we're terrified. So we're like, we've got to hang on to some of these because we're not sure what's going to happen when we die. And everything I've said so far, some of you are actually like, yeah, I fully believe that's going to happen. And then you're going to get there, and here's the thing. You were taught that there are neighborhoods in heaven. And here's the thing. The ones who had nothing here are going to have Ferraris and hot tubs and pools and mansions in heaven. And then the people who had mansions and Ferraris and hot tubs here are going to be living in absolute one-bedroom shacks that are made of sticks with no air conditioning for eternity. And then you get Dante in his Inferno, where there's 7 different levels. And if you've done really bad, you're going to the 7th layer of hell. But even in heaven, apparently, there are layers, neighborhoods. Do you live in the good part? Do you live in the rough part? What part of the city of Jerusalem are you in? North side or south side? Yeah, this is what we were taught. And but check it out. Peter's there, and then God says, well done, thou good and faithful servant, because God speaks English and King James. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Come on in, enjoy your new home in heaven. And then you walk in, and then check it out. Before you get in, though, they'll show you. You're going to get there, and there's one giant pearly gate. And it's right here. It's in the Bible, pearly gate. So you move. So he's going to slide the gate, or he opens the gate. Or I would imagine there's technology there, so maybe the gate just opens automatically. This is come on in, and you walk into the new city. But check it out. As you walk in, it has like a Wizard of Oz type theme. Instead of a yellow brick road, the roads are made of gold. Because everything that heaven ever wanted to aspire to be is just like Trump and his mansions. And of course, that's heaven, right? Heaven is a glorified version of Mar-a-Lago. Just gold streets, gold toilets, gold everything. And you, by the way, if you're here and you're like, are you mocking? No, this is the Bible. It's right here. It's all like in here. Yeah. The street of the city is pure gold. Wow. Yeah. I know. Well, let's just keep reading. Remember, we started all this with the border. We're going to get back to it. I saw no temple in the city. I don't know how to tell you this. Good news about you futurists that read this as heaven. You don't have to go to church anymore. I know. No temple. No temple. You don't have to go to church. For its temple is the Lord, God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. Oh, here's one. And the city has no need of sun. I don't know about you, but that's depressing. But then he goes on, or moon to shine on it. For the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. Y'all, if you've been around the series, you know what that Lamb reference is. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. How about we get back to the walls? Remember, politician? Well, even heaven had walls. So this is our proof text for why we're building walls. We're just trying to be like the new Jerusalem. For many people think America is the new Jerusalem. Yeah, and that we Americans are the new Israelites. Yeah. Just read a couple verses down. I love this verse 25. And its gates will never be shut by day. Pause. There are even some who theologically were so lazy, they couldn't even read the rest of the verse. They would say, you're right, the gates will never be shut, but only during the day. People, just read the next phrase. And there will be no night there. Translation, the gates will never be shut. So build your wall, but if we're going to be like the Bible, the gates will never be shut. Which means people can enter and people can exit. By the way, we'll get to this one next week or the week after, as bad as I'm going 3-4 more weeks. Here's the thing. If you're a futurist and you read this as heaven, that means people can come in and people can go out. It's going to get even more crazy because apparently that people that didn't come in to begin with, here's where we're heading, are standing outside, and they always have the choice to come in when they want or leave when they want. Yeah. All right, gets better. People will bring into it the glory and the honor of the nations, but nothing unclean will enter it, nor anyone who practices abomination or falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. There it is. Now, chapter 22, verse 1. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life. This is a reference to Genesis 3. We'll come back to it in 2 or 3 weeks. And it's 12 kinds of fruit, produced its fruit each month, and the leaves of the trees are there for healing of the nations. Let me just pause there for today. 2 things that I want to draw your attention to here. 1, streets of gold. All right, let's talk about this. Because for many, we have bought into a futuristic reading, a left behind reading of this particular image that John is giving us. And we interpret these ideas literally like pearly gates and streets of gold. But if you read this in its first century context, then perhaps you could understand that what John is doing here is what he's been doing throughout the entire text. He is subverting what this empire values most. And I want you to notice how he's doing this. John is using imagery of the Roman Empire to critique the Roman Empire. Here's what I mean. What did Rome value? Gold. Everything Rome talked about was the Golden Age. Emperor Domitian was here to usher in the greatest moment in history that the world had ever seen. Nothing would be as great as this empire of Rome. It would understand peace like no empire has ever understood peace. It will have power like no empire has ever had power. It will have fresh, clean drinking water like no empire has ever had. And it will have food the likes of which an empire has never seen that you can stockpile for days. The economy will be bursting, and everyone who's not, quote, lazy, unquote, will be so wealthy and prosperous. And this is everything Rome promised, but it failed to deliver. And what does John do? As an act of subversion, he gives us an image, because that is how it works. That is exactly how it works. Imagination in the late first century is an act of resistance. By imagining, this is what John's doing, an alternative reality to the one he is currently experiencing, John is disrupting the current reality by evoking and nurturing and nourishing a new imagination. I think I read this to you last week, but it's imperative you hear this. Walter Brueggemann, who's just a great theologian scholar, he said it like this, quote, "It is the vocation of the prophet to keep alive the ministry of imagination, to keep on conjuring and proposing futures alternative to the single one the powerful wants to urge as the only thinkable one. Indeed, imagination is the last way left in which to challenge and conflict the dominant reality." And this is why it's so imperative that we keep gathering as a collective and keep pointing toward a reality that's different than the one we're experiencing. To not buy into the lie that this is all there is and this is the best it is. That actually there is another way. You don't have to choose the broad way that leads to destruction. There are actually other paths. And what John does is he uses that imagination. And by the way, I'll just pause here and say this. That is what you're seeing right now with every artist in this country. One of the things I love about the history in which we live right now is our kids and our kids' are going to be singing songs that were written and produced during this time. Because what you have are artists rising up right now. And oh my God, the literature, the songs, the writing, the things that are coming out of artists who understand this idea that keeping alive an imagination is an act of resistance is monumental. What's happening? I can't tell you. My Apple Music right now is filled with new artists I've never heard before that I keep getting introduced to. And these people, I'm telling you, they're like the Bob Dylan of our generation. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're writing songs that cut deep into the shadows of the American empire. They're exposing it for what it is. They are apocalyptic in its truest sense of the word. And I'm telling you, it makes me smile and brings me such great hope to watch what's happening with the generations behind us. We were in our meeting this morning, and we're not getting to it today because I've been working real hard. I'm balancing my own energy. We'll talk about that later, but so I'm trying to cut teaching shorter. It's a thing my therapist is like, you got to stop teaching for an hour. You're destroying your body. And I'm like, really? I can run, X amount of miles. She's like, yeah, but you got to settle down. All right. And I'm just like, we'll try. Okay. So we're going to cut it here in a little bit, but we were back there today. And before we have our gathering in here, we meet back there, our team does, and we talk about all kinds of different things, like what's the flow of the day going to be like. We make sure people run in slides. Make sure everything's good, make sure everything's on target, who's in the house today, who's running security, what's happening in the world, all this stuff. And then usually we give like a moment of inspiration. And today we were talking about Pope Francis and just the inspiration he's been for many of us. And what a gift. Richard Rohr has this great phrase about being on the edge of the inside. I love that phrase, the edge of the inside, because that's where I feel like Vinings Lake is. We're like on the edge of the inside of religion. You know what I'm talking about? I think Pope Francis was that way. Although I would say he wasn't on the edge, he was in the belly of the beast. You know what I'm talking about? But right in the Vatican, the belly of the beast. I mean, this man washing people's feet. Even the people that carried his casket were like transgender people. People, come on. If I've ever seen like an image of Jesus, I'm like, that's probably pretty close to my understanding of what Jesus is. Now, all that said, we were talking about the fact that, isn't it interesting how people are dying right now? And like Pete Enns, who's been here before, he has this great image that he gave me one time. He's like, yeah, when your parents die, or like for Katie and I, all of our grandparents are gone now. So like this year was a year where the last one stepped over, and now it's just like our parents. And PDN says, yeah, that means think about if life is a theater, you're on the second row now, is what he says. So he says when a generation dies, everyone that's in this generation has to get up and move up a row. You know what I'm talking about? I think I've given you this image before. I love that image because it's almost like, okay, and it's like, everyone please stand that's on this row, move out, go sit down in the next row. And then you start to realize you're getting closer and closer and closer and closer to the front row. And I realized Pope Francis is gone. Like even some of our great heroes are passing, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, you know what this means? We keep getting up and moving up a row. And I've told Katie this before. I'm like, our grandparents are gone. That means there's one generation before us. We're on row 2, which means we're about to be on row 1. And I was like, what have we done with our lives? We've got stuff to do. Like, we're about to be on row 1. And we were talking about it today in the back room, and Kevin, God, he said something so profound. I love this. And he didn't even say it like this, but it got my wheels spinning so much so that it's in this talk today. But he talked about how you could look at that and feel like you're running out of time, right? Like, oh my God, we're in this construct of time and we're running out. What are we doing with that? And I think that's great. I think we should hold that as a collective here. Seriously, people. What a gift we've been given to have a space like this that we can all gather in Mableton. What are we doing to shift this city, to usher in this new heaven and new earth that John is writing about? Great. But then Kevin went on to say, yeah, but let's all be careful that we're not like focusing so much here that we forget we can turn around and see generations of people sitting behind us on those rows. And this is key for us, that we don't forget that simultaneously while we're working up here, that part of the work we're doing is also bringing along with us generations of people behind us. And I need you to know something. We're now kind of at that age, all of us, because there's like a center of gravity here at Vinings Lake. And the center of gravity typically follows its communicator. Just want to be clear on that. I'm 43. So if we took a poll in here, I would imagine 50s, 60s, some 70s, largely 40, 30s, some 20s, right? That's how it works, right? So many of you are at that age. You have kids. They're like still in the kids program. So we know our kids program is like the booming, busiest thing. But what's happening is they're all getting a little bit older, graduating, going into middle school. So this is why we hired Garrett back here, guys back here. I just this week, all right. I love Garrett. I'm like, dude, how's it going? All right. He started in January. This is brand new for us, but it's really, really important for us that we keep pouring into this next generation, but not just pouring in, but leaning in and listening to them. Because I'm telling you, what's rising up, I have been so encouraged recently by what's rising up in the generations behind us. Gen Z alone, hearing the way they see the world, and it appears that they were born that way, which is really weird to me. But then it's not, because when I was born, I saw things in a particular way that my parents couldn't see. It's almost as if, now hang with me, the evolution of consciousness just keeps moving. And that each generation behind us has a little more consciousness and a little more consciousness and a little more consciousness. It's almost as if what we do matters and what we hand off to people matters, because it teaches them and then it teaches them and then they teach their kids and their kids teach their kids. Yeah, that's how it works. And so Garrett's back there right now. I have no idea. Sometimes he goes back there and there's like 2 kids. Last week I was like, Garrett, how'd it go Easter? He was like, man, I tried to do this whole resurrection spill, and he had this little block, and then he had a little small stick figure like Jesus, and he set Jesus on the side, and he had this little block, and he said he opened it up, and there was nothing in it for the resurrection. So he's like it was like an illusion. He's like, look, kids, here's the tomb, and he popped it open, and nothing was there. Like, oh, surprise. And then he said he looked over and he had the little Jesus figure, and he started moving the Jesus figure, going, I'm not in there. I'm over here. I'm alive. And I'm like, and he said every student in there was just like, I don't get it, right? And I'm listening to Garrett share, and he was just like, Yes, some days it feels like there's a world of a difference between Garrett, who's in his 20s, and a seventh grader, an eighth grader. And as he's telling me this, I'm going, oh man, if there's a difference between 20s and eighth grade, I would need a translator to talk. And some of you parents are like, yeah, I need one every day. But the things that they're picking up that he told me, I mean, the things that they're saying, and check this out, the things that you all have done so, God, I commend you. Garrett's like, you don't understand. I'm coming in here talking about deconstruction and some of the stuff that I'm working through, and these kids have never even heard of it. They've never even heard of a judgment house. I'm like, praise God, from whom all blessings flow. They're back there like, what is eternal conscious torment? Oh my God. Like, people, we're changing the world here. Like, it's happening. Yes, less therapy bills, less to unlearn, less toxic religious ideas that they've been handed that is going to increase panic and anxiety. Yes, they're understanding what a God of love actually is. That's it. That's it. And that's what's happening in this very moment. And this is what John is doing. He is doing exactly what's happening in Gen Z and the generations behind us. Like, this man is speaking imagination that defies all rationality. And he's refusing to believe that the image the dictator is given is the one that's actually true. And he's holding up another vision. It's exactly what Dr. King did when he said, I have a dream. That is what John is doing. That's all he's doing. He's going, I have a dream. I have a vision that one day there would be a new heaven, new earth, new city. And it's not just out there, some ethereal floating cloud called heaven. No. John says it's here. It's happening right now. God is making all things new right now. And this is why Jesus said, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's here. It's present. And it's up to us and the generations behind us to keep lifting up these images of how a world could actually be. And this is what John is doing. So when he says streets of gold, I want to be very clear. Everything Rome valued as significant, gold being one of them, John places as asphalt in the new city that we just tread on. Do you feel the cut there? And so for many of us, we're like, oh, heaven's going to be streets of gold. I can't wait. God, I hope heaven's better than streets of gold. Because honestly, I don't even really like gold. And pearly gates, pearls just don't do much for me. Now, if it was one long, big golf course, I'd be like, mm-hmm. But you understand what John is doing. He's not giving us a future prediction about the next world to come. I don't know how to tell you that. I don't believe that's what John is doing. He's writing to real people suffering in the late first century. And by the way, if it gives you some hope, then that's amazing. I'm not here to take that hope away. Because I do ultimately think that's what John is doing. He's trying to offer some hope. But I also think John has his feet planted on the ground. And I think what he's giving you is a vision, not just of some world to come. He's giving you a vision of what is actually possible here and now. And he's like, yeah, everything that Rome valued as significant, including gold, man, check this out. Let's just turn that upside down. Because it didn't promise and it didn't deliver. And John places it as just the very things that we walk on. The wealth of Rome that worked, unjustly accumulated, is now being walked on in the new world. Jeremy Duncan said this: the city is an indictment of our fascination with wealth, not a celebration of it. I want to repeat that. The city that John is showing us here is an indictment of our fascination with wealth, not a celebration of it. And I'll just close here because I think it's imperative we remember this. The vision John is giving us here is not about escaping. So much of what I was handed was about escaping. So much of the reading I was handed about Revelation was about getting out of here. And I'm going to be the first to be honest as we close here. There are days where sometimes I want to escape. There are days I wake up and I'll see a headline and I think to myself, this can't be real. There are days where the pain and the anxiety and the panic is so heavy where I just wish some of the stuff I was handed was true, that we're just going to zoom out of here, just escape all of it. But I don't believe John is giving us something here that is about escapism. I don't think this is about ascending or flying away to the sweet by and by. God, we used to sing that song, I'll fly away. Oh, glory, I'll fly away. I believe this is about, as John gives us the image, descending. So he says it's descending, it's moving down on us. So it's almost the opposite of going up and out. It's a coming down in the moment. And I believe this is working for renewal and restoration and redemption here and now. And so this isn't just an imagination for us to be like, man, can't wait one day when there's not a ruthless authoritarian leader oppressing people. I can't wait one day when everyone will have food to eat. I can't wait one day when everyone will have fresh, clean drinking water. I can't wait when pain and suffering is gone. All that's great. But if we're not careful, we'll push it so far out into the future that we'll spend the time that we do have here with the rows remaining just trying to survive. And I don't think that's what John is getting at here. I think this isn't just an imagination. This is an invitation to implement the very vision that John is giving us. That God is renewing, redeeming, repairing, and restoring this world. He's bringing heaven and earth together in this world. It begins here and it ends here. Friends, God hasn't given up on this place. And so I lean into the words of Jesus and I just pray it for all of us this morning. May his kingdom come. May his will be done on earth, in Mableton, in Atlanta, in the United States. May his will be done on earth exactly as it is in heaven. And may we not just stand by in an idle position waiting for something to happen, but may we be people that are ushering in and helping pull down this actual kingdom realm of God that is very much so here and present among us. So that's my heart for all of us today. Now, next week, we'll get in to the rest of this, and we'll talk about what John is getting at.